All right, so welcome everyone. Today we are talking about living with arthritis. Really, it's going to be a dive into arthritis, what it is, and the different types of arthritis, and generally how we treat, what the symptoms are and how we treat arthritis. I know this is a condition I think most people deal with at some point, typically later in age. And we will talk more about that in just a moment. Oops. So part of the reason why we're talking about this this month is that May happens to be Arthritis Awareness Month. And so just some facts. In the United States, 1 in 4 adults, which is more than 54 million people, have arthritis. And the most common form of arthritis is osteoarthritis, which we'll talk about. Almost half of adults over the age of 65 are diagnosed with arthritis. 26% of women and 19% of men in the US have arthritis. And it's the leading cause of work disability, with annual costs for Medicare and lost earnings of more than $303.5 billion. So obviously it's a major disease that it helps to know more about and know how to treat it. It does have a pretty big impact on the economy, and especially as we get older, it tends to affect many people. So what is arthritis? It's the general term for conditions that affect the joints or tissues around the joints. And there are more than 100 types of arthritis and similar conditions. So it's a pretty broad spectrum of conditions. It's not just one thing. Most types of arthritis cause pain and stiffness in or around the affected joint or joints. Some types of arthritis also affect the immune system and some internal organs of the body. As I mentioned before, the most common form is osteoarthritis. But other common types include rheumatoid arthritis, gout, and fibromyalgia, which we're going to go into. Technically, fibromyalgia isn't really arthritis, but it does fall into a category in that it's very similar in terms of being a chronic pain condition, and treatment is very similar as well. So the most common form, osteoarthritis, it accounts for over 60% of all arthritis cases. So of that 54 million Americans, 34 of them have osteoarthritis. It's often the disease known as like the wear and tear disease, because we have cartilage on our joints, between our joints, and with chronic use, over time, that cartilage can wear away, just like brake pads on your car, or even your tires kind of wearing, with use. It occurs most frequently in the hands, hips, and knees. These are all joints that we're using frequently. And as I mentioned, cartilage within a joint begins to break down and the underlying bone begins to change. These changes usually develop slowly and get worse over time. And you can see this just image. You have the healthy joint on the left, looks kind of like a knee joint, and on the right there's the osteoarthritic joint. Over time there's that wear and tear, so cartilage starts to get damaged. And once it's bone on bone, and the cartilage is gone, when the bones start to rub against each other, that causes bone spurs, because what tends to happen is with that chronic tension on your bones tend to send more calcium to that part of the bone, and that creates bone spurs. It basically is like a growth of your bone in order to try to minimize the damage, right, over time, because your body wants to prevent your bones from being really damaged as they rub against each other. But of course, that makes it even more painful and worse and stiff. And the image on the right looks like a pretty severe case of osteoarthritis. Also, one other thing, since the cartilage starts to wear away, then the joints tend to get more narrow. They tend to kind of squish together, and and that kind of just amplifies everything. And when there's all this friction, extra friction of the joints, bone on bone, that causes inflammation and pressure. And that's why there's just a lot of pain. It's going to be a very painful disease, especially when you're trying to move or use the joints. So symptoms, kind of started talking about them: pain or aching, stiffness, decreased range of motion, and swelling. So, right, as the joints are rubbing together, of course, you're gonna have pain. If it is bone on bone and you have those bone spurs, you're not going to be able to move the joint quite as freely as you used to be. So that's where stiffness comes, and of course, that leads to decreased range of motion, decreased flexibility, and the swelling. Your body always causes inflammation and swelling wherever there is this kind of chronic. Your body feels like it's under attack, and so it's sending more blood and fluid there to try to heal that area. Unfortunately, most types of cartilage do not heal. So once it's gone, it doesn't really come back. So it's just kind of a spiral as it goes. Some of the risk factors: you have joint injury or overuse. So if you injure your joint severely, the cartilage might get damaged, and then of course that can lead to osteoarthritis. As we mentioned, age has a big effect on developing osteoarthritis as we get older. We're just, over time, we use our joints more, and there's just more tendency to kind of wear them out. Gender: women are more likely to develop osteoarthritis than men, especially after age 50. Obesity: if you're heavier, the excess weight tends to kind of compress your joints more, and so there's more pressure on the cartilage, which can cause it to damage and develop the arthritis. And finally, genetics. Typically, people who have family members who have osteoarthritis have a tendency to also develop it. And people, and it's also kind of based on area too. If people have hand arthritis, they're more likely to develop knee arthritis. So if you have arthritis in one part of the body, you actually are more likely to develop it in other parts of the body as well. So yeah. Finally, treatment of osteoarthritis: increasing physical activity. So a lot of times, actually, surprisingly, people that have osteoarthritis, if you have a lot of pain, you're not going to want to be moving as much, but you really want to keep moving, because that actually has many benefits on the joints. And we'll talk about that more toward the end. Physical therapy can help give specific exercises for osteoarthritis improvement. Losing weight can help. Medications, particularly pain relievers, are often used. Supportive devices: if a joint isn't moving as freely, crutches or canes or walkers might work. And surgery, in cases where a joint is really worn out. A knee replacement, for instance, would be an example of a surgery for treating severe knee arthritis. The next form that we're going to talk about is rheumatoid arthritis. So this is actually an autoimmune disease causing inflammation in the affected parts of the body. So autoimmune meaning your own immune system is basically attacking your body, or parts of your body. For whatever reason, there's some kind of issue going on and they're attacking. And that causes joints to be damaged and inflammation. Over 1.3 million Americans have rheumatoid arthritis. So significantly less than osteoarthritis, but still a big number. Rheumatoid arthritis mainly attacks the joints, usually many joints at once. And it commonly affects joints in the hands, wrists, and knees. Often, this looks like in the hands, you have the big swelling around the finger joints is a really common look. Sometimes fingers can be a little bit distorted and misshapen over time with rheumatoid arthritis. In a joint with rheumatoid arthritis, the lining of the joint becomes inflamed, causing damage to joint tissue. The tissue damage can cause long-term and long-lasting or chronic pain, unsteadiness, and deformity. And rheumatoid arthritis can also affect other tissues throughout the body and cause problems in organs such as the lungs, heart, and eyes. So because it is an autoimmune disease, that tends to attack the joints, it can have implications with other parts of the body as well. But kind of a similar thing when your immune system is attacking the joints, often the cartilage can be damaged or different parts within the joint can be damaged, and that leads to the damage of the bones, rubbing against each other and stiffness. And there's always a lot of excess swelling in this case. Symptoms: pain or aching in more than one joint, stiffness. So a lot of this sounds pretty similar to osteoarthritis. Tenderness and swelling in more than one joint. The same symptoms on both sides of the body, such as both hands or both knees. Weight loss, fever, fatigue, or tiredness, weakness. So there are a few other symptoms. This being an autoimmune disease, your body it takes a toll because your own immune system is kind of attacking. And so it does lead to other symptoms beyond just that wear and tear at the joints. Age has some effect on this, as the likelihood as your age increases, the chance of rheumatoid arthritis increases. Typically, the onset is in the 60s. Females tend to be 2 to 3 times higher than males in getting rheumatoid arthritis. Genetics also plays a role. People born with specific genes. Common gene, the human leukocyte antigen, is often linked with rheumatoid arthritis and can also have an effect in making it worse. And smoking has an effect, as does obesity. So some similarities, of course, with the previous one, which is why they're in a similar category. Treatment can be effectively treated, and actually I missed the letter there, but the rheumatoid arthritis can be effectively treated with medications and self-management strategies. Treatment usually includes medication that slow the disease and prevent joint deformity. And so these are drugs specifically designed for rheumatoid arthritis. Things that will help slow and minimize the effect of your immune system, attacking your own body. Other medication, in addition to medications, people can manage rheumatoid arthritis through self-management strategies proven to reduce pain and disability, allowing them to pursue activities important to them. And we'll talk a little bit about self-management strategies and things like that, because that's actually a common trend with a lot of arthritis conditions. Also, physical activity is not mentioned here, but the physical activity is always recommended, especially for weight management and factors like that. Second. Right, on to the next one. Next is fibromyalgia. So fibromyalgia affects about 4 million US adults, or 2% of the population. It's a condition that causes pain all over the body, sleep problems, fatigue, and other emotional and mental distress. People with fibromyalgia may be more sensitive to pain than people without. And the cause of fibromyalgia is not known, but it can be effectively treated and managed. So kind of similar, actually, rheumatoid arthritis also, the cause is not exactly known. So it's just, one of these conditions that causes pain that certain people just get. And you can see on the diagram here, like other forms of arthritis, your joints and muscles can have a lot of pain. In this case, though, it's often very widespread. It's not necessarily focused, it is focused on specific joints and areas, but it's typically all around the body. And often you have other factors, kind of like rheumatoid arthritis, where you are tired more. Depression is very common with this condition. You may also have conditions like digestive issues. So a list of symptoms, and kind of as we go, the symptoms get a little bit longer. So pain and stiffness all over the body, fatigue and tiredness, depression and anxiety, sleep problems, problems with thinking, memory, and concentration, headaches, including migraines, tingling or numbness in the hands and feet, pain in the face or jaw, kind of like temporal mandibular joint syndrome, often known as TJS, and digestive problems. Treatments include medications. Actually, move this here. Oops. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll move on right here. Sorry, I had a little issue there. But treatment includes medications, including prescription drugs and over-the-counter pain medications, aerobic exercise and muscle strengthening exercise, patient education classes, stress management techniques, good sleep habits, and cognitive behavioral therapy can be used to treat the underlying depression. CBT is a type of talk therapy that is meant to change the way people act or think. So fibromyalgia, the cause not really being known, it being kind of this neural, maybe possibly, cognitive disorder, does often have more of that mental effect where there is that strong link with depression. And so behavioral therapies can really help manage this condition and help kind of overcome that widespread pain. And lastly, gout is the final type of arthritis we're going to talk about. It's a common form of inflammatory arthritis that is very painful and usually just affects one joint at a time, often the big toe. Almost 4 million Americans have gout. And there are times when symptoms get worse. These are known as flares, and times when there are no symptoms, known as remission. There's no cure for gout, but you can effectively treat and manage the condition with medication and self-management strategies. And you can kind of see this picture. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but these uric acid crystals build up in the joints, typically in your big toe area, and that kind of locks things up and causes damage and a lot of pain. So symptoms: pain, swelling, redness, and heat. So very similar to the other forms. This one, unlike the others that tend to affect more women, this one tends to affect more men. So being male is a risk factor, being obese. Also, certain health conditions can lead to it: congestive heart failure, hypertension, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and poor kidney function. And using certain medications, diuretics, for instance, actually can lead to gout. Drinking alcohol is a big one that we often focus on. Heavy alcohol use, the more you drink, there's a higher chance of developing gout. And eating or drinking food and drinks high in fructose tends to do it, as well as a diet high in purines, which break down into uric acid. And these include red meats, organ meats, kinds of seafood such as anchovies, sardines, mussels, scallops, trout, and tuna. So this is largely affected. There's a big dietary component to it. And gout, kind of similar to the other ones, medical treatment, so anti-inflammatory drugs can help with the flares, so those moments of really bad pain. And then certain therapy type drugs that lower uric acid in the blood can also be used in certain cases. Like the other types of arthritis, self-management strategies are key: losing weight, keeping physically active, limiting alcohol, eating less purine-rich food, and changing or stopping medications associated with hyperuricemia, which is that excess uric acid in the blood. So diuretics tend to lead to more of that. So kind of as we discussed, all of these forms of arthritis, physical activity is one of the major ways that we can treat and improve or reduce the negative symptoms of arthritis. So if you have arthritis, participating in joint-friendly physical activity can improve your arthritis pain, function, mood, and quality of life. Joint-friendly physical activities are low impact, which means they put less stress on the body, reducing the risk of injury. And examples include walking, biking, and aquatic fitness. Being physically active can also delay the onset of arthritis related to disability and help people with arthritis manage other chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. So physical activity is, it's one of these things that we've talked about. If you could put all the positive benefits of physical activity in a pill, that would be like a major, one of the best pills ever, because it would help with so many chronic conditions. But it's very, very important for arthritis. It's just about choosing the right low impact physical activity. And so there's basically 5 steps for managing arthritis. One moment. So one, talking to your doctor, it may have not been diagnosed yet. It is good to get a diagnosis on what kind of arthritis you have. Majority of the cases are osteoarthritis, but it could be other types. If it's something like rheumatoid arthritis, that can involve other types of medication that can minimize the symptoms. Being active is, of course, as we've talked about, super important with managing your arthritis, but choosing the right types of physical activities is key. Managing your weight is really important because if you're heavier, that can put more strain on your joints and therefore more pain and increase the frequency and damage of the joints. Protecting your joints. So this goes with choosing the right types of activities that you participate in. If it's some kind of heavy sport, with twisting and other fast type motions, maybe high contact, it's not as good on your joints. Also, using protective equipment when necessary, being mindful of chronic movements. So, how we pick things up. If you're always bending over at the spine rather than hinging at the hips, then you're going to be more likely to develop back pain and even possible arthritis in the back. So being mindful of your joints and learning joint protective exercises and things is really important. And finally, learning self-management skills. So there are self-management workshops out there that you can find, but generally self-management skills are knowing how to manage your pain, knowing what works and kind of taking account of that. Being organized with medications and your exercise routines, kind of being reflective of your life. Managing your sleep schedule, having a regular sleep schedule. Addressing your emotional side, and psychology. How do you think about yourself? Is there depression? Are there other underlying factors psychologically? And finally, just finding balance within your life. Are you devoting too much of your time to one activity or the other? So these are all examples of self-management skills. As we've talked about, things like obesity and such, develop over time and can be managed if you improve your self-management skills. So those are kind of the 5 recommended, CDC recommended factors for managing your arthritis, and really can be applied to all forms that we talked about today. So with that, I will just open it up to any discussion or questions, or if anyone wants to share anything. So questions or feedback, and I'll go ahead and end this here so we can turn this up too.
Brent, I just had one comment. I'm really sorry I missed the part on osteoarthritis, so I hope you do. I see recordings, so I think you said you would have that up. So
yes,
I had trouble finding the darn thing. I got in at 2 minutes after 2 and had difficulty finding it. So
oh shoot,
sorry about that.
No worries.
I was watching a program, I believe it was on PBS the other week or so, on the brain revolution, which was really interesting about how the brain senses pain.
Yep.
And for people who have chronic pain, the brain can almost be trained to say, you're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fascinating to see the studies and the really investigations about how the brain and pain relate. I will be very interested to see how that develops. I have a niece who has a lot of fibromyalgia pain and a lot of related things. She has Lyme disease, everything. And when I heard that, I thought, the darn brain can say, keep it going. It can kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost similar to migraines, right? Fibromyalgia kind of falls into that, and they're often related. Often migraines can accompany fibromyalgia, and they're both not very well understood yet as to what is causing it. I think a lot of it does start in the brain, kind of these patterns that just develop, whether we're genetically predisposed or or something else. It's still, yeah, there's gonna definitely in the years to come, I'm sure there'll be interesting research. But it is interesting. There are techniques, right? Therapy, whether it's like, counseling, psychological techniques that can help people kind of rewire, get those patterns so that they don't lead to a painful, state, whether it's a migraine or these fibromyalgia, widespread pain. So yeah, that was, especially in that case of fibromyalgia, that is one of the major recommendations is certain types of therapy, like I think it was CBT therapy. Yeah. And another thing kind of in relation to that, right? Because pain is, I mean, people hate hearing this, and it's not something that's ever anyone should say, but pain is technically all in your head, right? It's all just these neural signals, and your brain does have that ability to cut off signals if it wants to, if in cases of extreme stress and such. There's been so many stories about these hikers that fall a big distance and they break a leg or something, and they're in the middle of nowhere and they have to get to get to safety, but they're miles away, and they of course, and something that should be causing excruciating pain, their brain can actually cut it off long enough for them to get to safety, and then almost as soon as they get to safety, then it's like, okay, open the channels, and then they have that pain again. But it's really interesting. There are, your brain can do stuff like that, and I guess learning to manage that is something that research is kind of heading towards.
Yeah.
But great comment. Good. Yeah, definitely relates to all this. I think for a lot of forms of arthritis, osteoarthritis in particular, it's hard. It would be hard to do. It's different from fibromyalgia in that your joints are physically, been physically damaged. And so, often the best case in really severe cases of arthritis, like in the knee, would be like a replacement or something, because then at least you get rid of the damaged joint. And you don't have the nerves constantly being irritated. But I mean, pain management techniques definitely are important for all forms of arthritis. Stress management type techniques, things like Tai Chi and yoga can both help a lot if you can just learn to be more mindful in the moment. Yeah, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's really good. Anyone else want to share anything or? All right. Well, thank you for joining. This was good overview. I'm always happy to discuss further in further detail if you have arthritis, or someone and want more information, want to talk about it, how exercise in particular, how we can apply exercise to it, feel free to come by. We do have our aquatic fitness class now once a week, and you can go to the pool anytime. That's one of the best types of physical activity for arthritis. So I definitely recommend taking advantage of the pool that we have. And yeah, other than that, hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining.